Here we are. To those of you who have followed along for the past 18 weeks, this race we are about to undertake today is the culmination of all things which make the Crew Motorfest what it is. Fast cars, open road, and a playlist to set the mood. But you don't have to take my word for it.
Motorfest clearly enjoys going the extra mile in these playlists. Actually, this time they're going for a whole 50 miles extra, so I hope you've had your breakfast.
Putting it all together, this is Liberty Territory.
As you can see, it starts with Liberty Nation, with the return of the Mini Cooper.
3 sections means 3 cars, and as Toji highlighted, more than 50 miles of beautiful scenic oceanside highway. Now I may chime in here and there, but for now, just sit back and enjoy the ride. Alright, making our way into Kane-Ohei. This was where our story began, with Kyola Nakahiki Raposo showing us around. I'll admit, he was a bit of an oddball, but it was a nice experience. I didn't know this, but turns out his daytime trade is fashion design. I suppose that would explain how he knows so many of the artists who did the graffiti work for the festival. I wonder how he's doing right now. Let's keep going. There is a long way to go, after all. Oh goodness, I remember this arch. Looks like they managed to fix the fence along the roadside. After Kai Akana found out, she was absolutely livid with me. I'd heard through the grapevine that she's still doing her mechanic thing, but that she also was brought on as a consult for Motorfest Productions. Some film called High Ride, I guess? I don't really watch movies that much.
Hey, how are you holding up?
Still at it.
You're about to switch to Liberty Works. Expect a more buff ride and some extra speed.
So, what do y'all think they're gonna give me? It's probably the M4.
Coming right up. Careful for the swap.
Whoa, I am never gonna get used to that.
There you go. Back with the BMW M4 Liberty Walk Edition. My firm favorite of the day. Moving to second gear. Go kill it.
This leg of the race is a bit more tight and technical, taking us through the James Campbell Wildlife Refuge, the Turtle Bay Beach, the rural town of Haleiwa, and Kaena Point State Park. The M4 is an interesting choice given its power curve, but we're gonna give it all that we've got. So this area of Turtle Bay has become very familiar to me. Y'all might remember it from the event Mustang Sally, which has become probably the best way for me to grind bucks and EXP out of every event offered by the festival. I'd highly recommend trying it out for yourself, seeing as it has some of the best shortcuts just right for the taking. Well, I do have to admit, this M4 is certainly no slouch in the corners. We're just over halfway, and I have to wonder what the final car is going to be. As long as it's not the Chrysler 300. Seriously, I'm still a bit salty about that one. Alright, here we are, Cayena Point State Park. Fun fact, the trail through the park is normally unpaved, but the Motorfest crew got special permission to complete Farrington Highway, provided they return the trail to its natural state whenever the festival is over. Or perhaps the festival will never end, who knows?
Swap is only seconds away. You know what that means, right? Third gear. Hold onto your seat. Back on the Liberty Performance side. With the fastest customized car of this whole Liberty Walk experience, the Huracan Performante by Liberty Performance.
So, the Huracan Performante, eh? I'm not sure I know how to really describe this thing, other than that the styling is like that of a fighter jet. Like, look at these toggle switches to the right of my steering wheel. I have no idea what the hell they even do, and I'm almost afraid to find out. Plus, didn't Batman drive a Lamborghini? Oh, but his was a Murcielago. Either way, this is just a totally different kind of hypercar. Crossing over the Ford Island Bridge brings us right back into the city of Honolulu. Though with a density of nearly 6,000 people per square mile, I'd say it's a bit too crowded for someone like me. If I end up buying a safe house here on the island, I'm thinking I'll find a comfy spot on the east side of Wahiawa. Not too rural, not too urban, definitely more my speed.
You kept pace with the pack last time after all. Looks like it wasn't just a fluke.
Well, folks, as they say in the industry, that's a wrap. And you're probably thinking, wait a minute, there's more playlists than this. Not only Donut Media, which yes, I did skip over, but there's also Supercar Blondie, Automobili Lamborghini, Gymkhana, and more. What I'll say is that if you want to experience those things, you should do so by jumping into Motorfest yourself. For that matter, you'd be quite well to play even the playlists I covered, because I intentionally left a lot of unique races on the cutting room floor. My style of content has always been to give only a sliver of the full experience. Motorfest really does have that experience in spades, and even when the playlists are all finished, that's really when the game is just starting for most players. When I began filming all the way back in November, I honestly had zero idea of what the storyboarding was going to be for the series. I had basically purchased the game, opened it up for the first time, and hit record. Difficulty was set to intermediate, no changes to the parameters beyond that, and every event was done in a single take. Doing this took me almost 20 hours. It's truly a lot, and you almost take it for granted because, well, PvP and PvE exist. Like, at any time I could have said screw it and just jumped onto the main stage instead, but I felt like Ubisoft had done such an amazing job at putting a series of stories together that I wanted to just focus on that aspect. To me, it's kind of interesting that they brought on real people as cameos and intermingled them with the other actually fictional cast members, but it's all done in such a way that it all kind of works seamlessly. With the exception of Kara, because, well, she's pretty much a parody of the LLM craze. As comparisons go, people love to compare this game with the Forza Horizon series. Since I've still yet to play Horizon 5, I can only speak to my experiences with Horizon 4. When it comes to the stories on Horizon 4, I think what really hindered those stories is the cast of characters in them really had no motivation. At least, not ones that the player could resonate with. Like, off the top of my head, half of them were just people running businesses for money. One was an insurance company, one was a delivery service, one was a taxi company, and all you do in those missions is get from A to B to do a task that doesn't relate to any of the tasks which came before it, let alone after it. And then a few of them had you chauffeuring around a blogger or a podcaster who always erred on the side of pretentiousness the entire time. Like, at the expense of waxing political, Forza markets itself as a car collection game, where it's more important to have cars to look at and photograph than it is to actually drive them. It is truly a game for the people who want to live out their fantasies of being a 1%er. And that's the sort of thing Ivory Tower knew to avoid in making the stories for Motorfest. Every character you meet in-game feels invested in the world building. You had Jim Hayfield, that rock musician who was likely a cultist and also did some questionable things with his cars. You had Kaya Kana, who was this rough and tough woman just clinging to her own sentimentality. You had Pierce Walker, that literal Bear Grylls wannabe, who genuinely sounded passionate about his craft. Not to mention, every one of the pack members was just amazing. And the fact that they each got their own stories and were constantly referencing each other throughout those stories really built that sense that the player was progressing through the career. That being said, Shingo and Ren of the pack both have still yet to host standalone playlists, and Ren was honestly more present than Shingo in my Made in Japan episode because, well, things happen in the storyboarding process. Which it ultimately turned into a running joke, and here we are. And to my benefit, all of this really jived well with the intention to make my video series like a bona fide TV show. You know, like Top Gear or the Grand Tour, but with my own unique spin. And I told myself that once I accomplished that, got it to where I wanted, that's where I was going to stop. I told the story I wanted to tell, and that's all there is to it. And of course, I knew that I was still going to run bonus episodes every Tuesday, and shorts nearly every weekend. And because those videos were filmed much further in time, you can see all the changes that took place after November. You can see the changes in the driver difficulty and assist system configuration, the way my personal cars have all been extensively pro-tuned, my progress in various summits that took place during the winter and spring months, so on and so forth. Again, I am aware that I do things way differently than other content creators do it. Most Motorfest creators are posting their daily progress, grand races, summit results, and Demolition Royale, whatever that is. It is a surefire way to make dozens, if not hundreds of videos, and you could probably attract a decent following doing just that, but I honestly could not bring myself to do that because doing so lacks soul, if that makes sense. I think before I can really close this out, I need to bring up the elephant in the room as to why people feel like this game doesn't attract the hype that The Crew and The Crew 2 did in the past. It's because they themselves haven't really decided on an end goal for themselves in this game. So Motorfest is a game that doesn't really have a traditional roll credits, and that's probably a good thing because the credits are literally 45 minutes long and I truncated them for this final episode. But ultimately my point is that the player has to decide for themselves what point they can say they have achieved everything they wanted out of this game, as they would with any game, mind you. Like, let's be honest, collecting every vehicle in the game is going to be impossible for most people, since some vehicles are only given to the top 10,000 players of weekly tournaments. So if you're not in the top 10,000, well, there's nothing to be done about it. But Motorfest doesn't really incentivize you to collect every vehicle the way Forza does, because they know that you'll have no desire to drive every vehicle you have. And that's why the stories prioritize driving vehicles that are loaned to you, that you don't own, and don't have to own, unless you decide you want to own them later on. Getting to the top of the leaderboards is of course possible for most people. Permanent leaderboards will always be there, though live summit leaderboards reset every week, and main stage leaderboards reset every month, meaning you are constantly having to one-up other players, and are constantly getting one-upped yourself. Meaning, if your end goal is to be the greatest player in the game, well, good luck with that. Honestly, that sounds like a really boring goal that fails to fully appreciate the love and care that went into building an interwoven community beyond the grand races. Now, by the time this final episode has come out, I'll have probably put in around 250 hours, or more even, into the game myself. So what's my end goal, you might ask? I would say for me, it's to make the fictionalized version of Oahu feel like a second home for me. That is why I prioritize driving the cars that are most authentic to the lifestyle I'd wish to have. And no, these are not always the most expensive or highest performance vehicles in the world, because as I've said many times before, that just isn't me. And I think that's why the bonus episodes and road trip talks continue to be my highest priority, because they have become a kind of storytelling in their own right. You know, it's the story of me trying to find myself within both the real world and in this one. And to me, that's more compelling than, oh, I am such and such rank on the revolving leaderboards. But I digress. Now that this series is done, I do have more time to focus on post-game antics, so bonus episodes and road trip talks will of course continue into the summer. And if I figure out how to genuinely break this game, I assure y'all there will be full coverage on that. Anyway, I think that's enough for today. Thank you so very much for watching, and I hope to see y'all on the streets of Honolulu in the future.